itertools in Python. In this lecture, we'll take a quick revision on iterables, and we'll talk about itertools and the count, cycle, and repeat functions. First, let's talk about iterables. An iterable is an object we can iterate on. In other terms, an iterable is one that can return an iterator. What really happens inside an iterator? We can use the dis function from the dis module to disassemble a for loop. Let's import it and call the dis function on this for loop. It gives us the set of instructions it goes through. GetIter is like the iter function that creates an iterator. ForIter is like the next function that returns the next element. There's one thing about iterables. These have the methods len and getItem. We have the list 1, 2, 3. We call the length method on this. Well, the list has 3 items, 1, 2, and 3. So the length of this list is 3. GetItem gets the item at the index 2. This is the value 3. So what are some iterables in Python? What constructs have the len and getItem methods? These are iterators, generators, sets, userdicts, dequeues, default dicts, and ordered dicts. We can iterate on these. This is an iterator on a list, and then we create an iterator on this and call it B. The next element with B is 1. With A, it is 2. This means they're iterating on the same iterator. itertools has 3 main functions: count, cycle, and repeat. Count takes in an integer to begin counting at, and then keeps counting infinitely until we stop it. We need to import it from itertools if we want to call it by name. This is a for loop on the values 7 and ahead. When num is greater than 14, it breaks out. If it hasn't broken out yet, it prints num. So it starts counting from 7 and keeps printing until it becomes greater than 14. Then it stops. If we don't make it break out, it prints infinitely. This loop counts infinitely from 7. We can interrupt this by pressing Ctrl and C. This raises a keyboard interrupt. Without an argument, count begins counting at 1, but if we use a second argument, it serves as the interval. This can be positive or negative. The interval is 2 here, and counting starts at 2. Also, it breaks out at 12. So we get the even values from 2 to 12 inclusive. The cycle function continuously cycles over the values of an iterable. We must explicitly break out of this loop. So we import cycle and set the variable count to 0. Now for each item in cycle of blue and green, we print it and increment count by 1, but break out when count becomes greater than 7. So it keeps cycling over the list to alternatively keep printing blue and green until it has printed 8 times. And then there's the repeat function. This one repeats an object infinitely. We must explicitly break out of it. This code sets count to 0. The for loop keeps repeating on the value 7. It prints it and increments count to 1. When it has printed 6 times, we break out. So it prints the number 7 6 times. And like with the count function, repeat may take a second argument. This tells it how many times to repeat an item. So the same code can be achieved this way without the if statements. This prints the number 7 6 times. In this lecture, we learned about the itertools module and the 3 functions count, cycle, and repeat.